Hi everybody, it's Joaquin Castro. On my way back to San Antonio from this Dilley trailer prison, and I wanted to give you all an update. So I just, a few minutes ago I left Dilly, and let me start with the most alarming thing. They are hiding the pregnant women from me. There apparently are about 8 women who are pregnant in Dilly right now, including one that was 8 months pregnant, that is 8 months pregnant, and is almost ready to give birth. And so, women and couples who have had a pregnancy, that you get to a certain point where you can't fly anymore. You're not allowed to fly. Doctors don't want you to fly. So she's so far along that they can't fly her out and deport her. So this morning, they sent all 8 of these women to an OBGYN in Laredo and claimed that it's the doctors that set the schedule and so forth. Now, bear in mind, this is when repeatedly people have complained of lack of medical attention and medical care and lack of prompt medical care. So there is this woman who is almost ready to give birth. There is another woman who is said to have had a lot of bleeding, a pregnant woman who's 3 months along and may be miscarrying. And this is information that we're receiving either from other women who are in the facility that know these women, or from family members who have expressed alarm. So they fear, these other folks, the other people that are being detained, that the women are being kept hidden. And so, my staff and I was there with about 6 staff members or so, and we're pressing ice in Core Civic to get to the bottom of exactly what's going on and what happened and why they're hiding these women from us. I think, in many ways it's gotten worse since I visited 3 weeks ago and since I took Liam and his dad home. Remember, I say that for a few reasons. They released Juan Nicolas, the young baby, 2-month-old baby that had spent about 3 weeks of his life at Dilly. They released him even though his mom said he had bronchitis. They abandoned he and his mom across the border in Mexico. And only thanks to the generosity of so many Americans was his family able to afford to go to a hotel and make sure that the baby was able to see a doctor. There's great reporting from Lydia Terrazas and others. They got great legal representation finally. But that kind of inhumanity, I think, has shocked the conscience. And in fact, the people at this facility said that because of the uproar about what happened to Juan Nicolas, because you spoke up, because you reached out, that DHS is now scrambling and basically in a panic trying to figure out what happened with that case, because they realize they're so fearful of how it's making them look to the American people. And you might say, based on everything that's happened, well, these guys, they obviously don't care what people think about them. And look, I'm not going to argue with you about that, because I agree what they've done in many cases has been outrageous. But they're still trying to create a certain narrative. They're still trying to preserve a narrative. They're still trying to project a certain image. And so this case of dumping a baby with bronchitis across the border has really infuriated a lot of people in America. And it's made Americans ask themselves, really, is this the kind of country we are, where you can't at least have the baby stay in the hospital or with the doctor until they're better before you deport them? And again, this family was not a criminal family, no criminal record at all. And I wanted to tell you all some more stories, because people have asked me, what's it like to be in there, to go in there or go into Dilly. There's a lot of desperation, just a lot of desperation, a lot of desperate people. And, many of them came here because they were desperate, because they were fleeing violence, some of them fleeing domestic violence, political persecution, dangerous situations. But the situation they're in now is also, for many of them, dangerous and creating this depression and despondence. And let me give you a few stories about why I say that. The first one was a medical emergency. Let me start with that. A boy that was about 15 or 16 who said that at 9 a.m. one day he started having very intense pain in his midsection and went to the nurse and asked for help. And they blew him off. And he said he could barely walk and told him he could barely walk, and they blew him off. And they said, if you're still in pain in 3 days, come back in 3 days. And he said, I can't walk. So he threw up all over the floor, and then they finally started taking it more seriously. And so at 6 o'clock at night, he finally was taken to a hospital and had appendicitis and still wasn't treated for hours later. So he was suffering from this appendicitis without getting any medication, any painkiller, anything for all these hours, whatever it was, hours later, 12 hours later, 14 hours later, whatever it was. And then a young girl who's 5 years old, who before she was taken in, she and her family, she had some cavities that were going to get filled. And since she went into Dilly, they haven't done any work on her teeth. Well, a few years ago, I had to have a root canal. And there was one night I remember before I went into the dentist where I was having such intense pain, and it was like at midnight or 1 a.m. Those of you that have ever experienced that, you know what it feels like when your teeth are it's just like that sharp, sometimes burning pain. I mean, I would have paid anybody anything I could afford at 2 a.m. to fix that for me. So this girl has been having this pain in her teeth, and they still have not given her dental treatment to fix that. And now remember, I told you that when I first went to Dilly, they showed me all these medical rooms and offices and all that, exam rooms, but there was nobody there. There was nobody in there. There wasn't patients. There were a few people that looked like health professionals around, but no patients being treated. And stories like this confirm my suspicion that the facility is there, but the treatment isn't. That people aren't actually getting the treatment that they need, and that it's just a front by Core Civic. Core Civic is a company whose market cap is $1.8 billion, I think. It's multi-billion dollars. Its largest shareholder is BlackRock. So Larry Fink and BlackRock. And my wish, hearing these stories and thinking about all the money that it makes for BlackRock and for Larry Fink and others, my challenge to Mr. Fink and to BlackRock and others who own shares in Core Civic would be to actually go in there and look at these facilities for yourself and listen to these stories and how the people in these facilities are treated, most of whom have not committed any crime, many of whom are young children. This young girl that has been in constant pain, being denied treatment in a facility owned by a company that you own, at least a part of, that is making you money. These companies, these facilities are making you guys rich, and yet they're treating people like animals. I think you ought to go in there and look at it for yourself and see what's going on and decide whether you want to make money that way. And so, a few more stories. First, a girl, Bessie, has been at Dilly for 4 months, and she has asthma, and the guards watched her have an asthma attack and didn't do anything. So this girl, she had an asthma attack and the guards didn't help her. And then Christopher, he's a young boy who came to the United States. He lived in Miami. He came when he was 1 year old, and I think he was about 12 years old now. He was picked up with his mom. She showed up. She had been checking in for years at these ICE check-ins, and she shows up with one of her sons this time and gets taken in and sent to Dilly. So he has other siblings that are still in Florida. And he was a student at Mater Academy in Miami, in the community. And he was saying that he was taking robotics courses and doing different things and learning. And now he doesn't get any schooling. When I went in January, I asked the core civic people why there wasn't any schooling, which, based on a Supreme Court decision from 1982, even for folks that are undocumented, they're supposed to receive schooling while they're in the United States. And they said, oh, it's all getting set up now. Now, Dilly reopened in April of 2025. So by that time, it had already been 8 months or whatever it is. They still do not have any schooling in Dilly. There still, right now, is no schooling in Dilly. No education for these kids. So these folks are depressed. They're despondent. They're missing their classmates. They're missing their family members. And their stories are a lot like Christopher's. He's an A student. He was over at Mater Academy in Miami. Another story was from Hala, a young girl, says they treat everyone like animals. Her sister has nightmares that she's being chased and that doors are closing. Remember, there's a lot of little kids who really probably don't know how to process this experience. Another story of Dennis, another young man. Most of the folks in the facility, they're speaking to you in Spanish. But Dennis was one of the folks that was speaking to me in English. And he's from Miami also, and he attended SLAM school in Miami, Sports Leadership and Management. And he was talking about his story and also about, the effect on he and his family. Again, his mom was explaining that school, it's a great school for folks that are really driven academically and in sports and everything. These were people that were part of their community. They're not criminals. They weren't hurting anybody in the country. And yet, they're locked up like criminals and being treated like animals. And you got this company, Core Civic, that's owned by even larger companies. They're making billions of dollars, and yet they're not even providing basic things like medical attention and medical care when people need it. And a lot of people are getting rich. They're getting rich off of the suffering of these people, off of the treatment of these people like animals. A lot of people in this country are getting rich off of that right now. And so wanted to read y'all a few more notes as well. Well, first, let me show you, I said last time we picked up a stack of information that was given to us. We got more right here. I'm going to go through this and translate it and everything. But, apparently we've heard repeatedly now that the guards have warned people not to talk to me. They don't want these folks to talk to me. And especially the most vulnerable people, like the pregnant women. You really think it was a coincidence that they sent all 8 pregnant women away this morning to Laredo for those appointments the day that I was showing up? Come on. Look at this drawing by this child. A description here of their experience. That's the experience of these kids at Dilley. The story of Liam Ramos, it gave a lot of the people in there hope, because they felt like, just like Liam, their family didn't do anything wrong. They didn't commit any crime, that they might have a chance to get out. And then they hear the story of Juan Nicolas, and they get scared again. They get fearful. They start to lose hope. Because, think about it, if the government, if ICE will dump a 2-month-old baby with bronchitis across the border, what do you think they'll do to the other kids that are 5 or 9 or 13? We're living in a time of intense and gratuitous cruelty by the Trump administration. And again, I challenge the people who own Core Civic and Geo to go down there and visit with the people that are being treated like animals, that are making them rich. I challenge Stephen Miller and the people in the Trump administration, who are the architects of this, to go into this facility and look those kids in the eye and explain to them why they're being treated like animals. And see, what's happened now is that a lot of the decisions about releasing some of these people, now Washington, ICE offices in Washington, are taking more control of it. And I believe that they want to make a point with these people, that they want to be cruel, that they want to see people suffer, because they think that it's sending some message, that this inhumanity is sending some message that they want to send. But you saw the poll this morning that Americans by a 2-to-1 margin reject ISIS tactics. Remember, we've seen the brutality on the streets in places like Minneapolis, but also in Chicago and Los Angeles and other cities. But remember, there's a brutality behind closed doors in that Dilley trailer prison, in Stipsy and Pearsall. Not just with the families, but also with the adults. Just to close out for a second, yeah, I just spoke with Juan Nicolas's mom, Mireya, and I was able to FaceTime with her, and Juan Nicolas looked like physically he was doing better. And so, she's obviously very incredibly disappointed that they were deported the way they were, dumped across the border. But she's happy that her young son is doing okay, and we're going to stay in touch. Obviously want to make sure that they're all right. And she also was very grateful to everybody who spoke up, for the generosity of so many Americans who were helpful. She feels also for a lot of the families that are still at Dilly in this trailer prison, and hopes for them that they will get out as well. All right, y'all. Then we'll have some more updates later, but just want to let you know that I just got done at Dilly, and I will be back there in March. We're going to keep going. We need to free our children. We need to close Dilly down. We'll talk soon.